Good afternoon. It's Monday, May 11th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. The High Court of Justice rejected Yesh Atid's petition against the government's decision to increase the number of ministers. The ruling now paves the way for the Knesset to approve the expansion of the government, but that won't be easy. Here with the latest is IBA's political correspondent, Eli Walgelanter.
Supreme Court Justice Daphne Barak Erez ruled today that she saw little possibility for allowing the court to intervene in a legislative matter, adopting the state's opinion that the number of ministers a given government should have was more of a Knesset decision than a court decision. Yesh Atid MK Ofer Shelach submitted a petition against the bill to the High Court of Justice last night, seeking a temporary injunction to bring the legislative process to a halt. We are facing a cynical ploy to change the rules for the good of the Prime Minister's political survival and lust for power, the petition said. This is a political outrage which will cause severe and fatal damage to the status and dignity of the Knesset. This is one of the lowest moments in the history of the legislature. Technically, Barak Erez's ruling was a temporary injunction, and the court could still strike down changes to the law in its final decision, but it is unlikely to do so. The Knesset is debating the bill, as you see here, in what is the first test of strength for, this is not live, for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's fledgling coalition. This morning, the Knesset Arrangements Committee, which you now see here, approved the discussion on the cabinet expansion. The debate is expected to last into the night and possibly through tomorrow and even Wednesday, and given the incoming coalition's razor-thin 61-vote majority, approval of the bill by the Knesset is not a sure thing. A concerted effort is being made to ensure that all Likud, Bayit Yehudi, Kulanu, Shas, and United Torah Judaism MKs will be present for all three votes on the bill. The opposition has promised to filibuster. Knesset Speaker Gildy Edelstein has promised that the 59 MK opposition will be given time for debate both today and tomorrow to express their reservations. The opposition is looking forward to the fight.
The opposition decided to be very straightforward, in a very fighting mood. We will not allow or give any discounts for the coalition. We will use all the parliamentary tools that the law gives us in order to prevent them, or at least postpone as much as we can the issue of approving this the change or the expansion of the cabinet, which needs 61 votes to change a basic law. This is a basic law. It might, we even might be successful to prevent the whole effort of the government and enforce Netanyahu to establish the 18-minister government first, which will be very hard for him to do it because he might lose 1 or 2 votes from this is a very sensitive majority that he has.
If the bill is approved on Wednesday, it is believed the swearing in of the new government, which was originally set for Wednesday, would be delayed until Thursday or even Sunday or Monday to give Netanyahu time to distribute ministerial portfolios to Likud MKs. Meanwhile, Knesset Speaker Edelstein ordered bodyguards to be provided to Bayit Yehudi faction head and Justice Minister-designate Ayelet Shaked after she received threats on her life on social networking sites. Edelstein told Army Radio that he was particularly disturbed by pictures circulated online of her in an SS uniform, similar to an infamous picture of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin before his assassination. We were shocked to see clear threats to MK Shaked, Edelstein said. We are obligated to protect our MKs from harm. The left has been outraged over Shaked's appointment, with some comments extending beyond simple political differences. Former Shinui MK Yosef Paritsky caused an uproar after making a series of sexist comments, writing on his Facebook page, "This is the first time in Israel the Justice Minister can star on the calendars that hang in garages." And he later compared Shaked to a woman of the Third Reich, meaning dangerous but beautiful. The statements stirred a defense of Shaked from female left-wing leaders, including Meretz chairwoman Zahava Galon and Zionist Union Party MK Sheli Yachimovich. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. President Reuven Rivlin is in Berlin taking part in ceremonies marking 50 years of diplomatic ties between Germany and Israel. Rivlin said that the friendship between the two countries was not always something that was obvious, but was built steadily over the years. The Israeli president recalled that 50 years ago, as a student, he protested near the president's residence against the arrival of the first German ambassador to Israel. Rivlin pointed out that the friendship between Jerusalem and Berlin is one based on shared values of democracy, and it is not just between governments, but between the two peoples. The Navy has purchased 4 advanced surface vessels from Germany for 430 million euros. The deal was announced today in Tel Aviv as the countries marked 50 years of diplomatic relations between them with the arrival of German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen for an official state visit. The ships, to be built by ThyssenKrupp, will be provided over the next 5 years and are expected to help protect Israel's maritime gas fields. The German government will pay 115 million euros towards the cost. ThyssenKrupp also committed to buy 700 million shekels worth of Israeli goods under the contract. It's been nearly 2 decades since Israel replenished its naval ships, and military officials are hoping the corvette will become the Navy's future combat ship. Israel already has 4 German-made submarines capable of launching nuclear warheads. A 19-year-old man was lightly injured this morning in a suspected stabbing attack by a terrorist near the Mishor Adumim junction next to the West Bank settlement of Ma'ale Adumim. Police launched a search for the suspect, apparently a Palestinian. The wounded man and other witnesses said that the attacker ran towards them and stabbed the young man in his back. Police believe the motive for the attack was nationalistic. In the last 10 months, there have been 2 other attacks in the area. In December, a teenager stabbed 2 people in a Rami Levy supermarket in Mishor Adumim, and in August, a guard at the entrance to Ma'ale Adumim was stabbed by a Palestinian man. A 3-year-old girl was killed and her brother and parents were injured when a fire ravaged their home in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Silwan. A gas balloon explosion caused the fire that injured the victim's 5-year-old brother, as well as his father and mother. The blaze was apparently caused by the children playing with a lighter. Mayor Nir Barkat arrived at the scene and was briefed by rescue workers. A deadly day of accidents on the nation's roads cost 4 people their lives. A fatal accident on Highway 57 near Kfar Yona in the Sharon region this morning left 2 people dead and 3 injured, 1 seriously and 1 moderately. A truck and a car collided head-on in an incident that is still being investigated by traffic police. The victims are the driver of the car and the passenger who was in the back seat. The highway was closed in both directions, causing serious traffic congestion on the route. At the Gan Raved junction near Rishon LeZion, a 40-year-old pedestrian was killed by a passing car. Near Bonim Beach on the coastal road before Haifa, a 65-year-old woman was killed when her car overturned. Israelis of Ethiopian descent vowed to continue protests in the streets if the authorities do not take their concerns seriously. Leaders of the community laid out their demands at a press conference in Tel Aviv yesterday, at which they insisted that the police officer who beat up an IDF soldier last month be put on trial, that charges be dropped against all protesters during rioting in Tel Aviv last week, and for steps to be taken to improve education, housing, and welfare for the community. Activist Inbar Bugali, who voiced the demands at the press conference, said that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's promise to appoint a ministerial committee to look into the problems is not enough, as a previous commitment by the Prime Minister 3 years ago never materialized. Celebrations today for the 50th anniversary of the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. IBA's Alexander Jen visited the site and want viewers to know all anniversary events are free of charge for the entire evening.
Happy birthday, dear museum. Happy birthday to you.
Thousands of people flocked to the Israel Museum today to celebrate its 50th anniversary. Amongst the visitors were prominent donors, Saul Zofman and his wife, Nira, who also attended the opening of the institution 50 years ago today. What was it like?
As a matter of fact, I don't remember. That's the real truth. But I remember the museum, as far as I can, as a small museum. The character of it was established right away as it was built. But today it's so intensively involved in the cultural life of Israel that it's unbelievable. It's not a side effect. It's a major institution in Israel. And a lot of children, a lot of people, and youngsters, soldiers, everybody comes to see the origin of this area. And you'll find
Free entry from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. lured crowds of children and adults alike to the many exhibits and special performances. Museum director James Snyder explained why he wanted the gems of the museum available to anyone who wished to experience them on this day.
When Teddy Kollek founded the museum 50 years ago, his idea was that a new state of Israel should have a national museum of the caliber of the great national museums of the great cultural capitals of the Western world. And he did it so that people in the state of Israel would really feel a connection to culture. So our idea for the 50th was just to have a big free day from 10 in the morning till 9 at night, open to all of our audiences across the state of Israel. And what you're seeing around us are Israeli visitors who are here for the day. It's great.
Here on the Israel Museum grounds, there are 3 new exhibits on display in the youth wing to celebrate the 50th anniversary. The 3 exhibits are titled Happy Birthday, 50 Years of Youth Wing Children, an Exhibition in a Box. They all aim to engage visitors in the history of the museum.
How do you commemorate 50 years of exhibition making in a small space in a way that will be accessible to the public, and also to the parts of the public who have never been to the Israel Museum, have never seen the youth wing. So the idea was to create boxes, lots of boxes, and in each box we have something from the original exhibition. It could be an original object from that exhibition, or if those don't exist, it would be a newly created object in the spirit of the original exhibition.
Celebrations for the 50th anniversary of the Israel Museum will continue through December 26th. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
In regional news, heavy casualties are reported in Syria in fighting between Hezbollah and the al-Qaeda-affiliated al-Nusra Front near the Lebanese border. In a separate battle, at least 40 rebels and 32 Syrian government troops were killed in heavy fighting that erupted inside a hospital complex in the northwestern town of Jisr al-Shughar. Rebels captured the town 2 weeks ago, and some 250 pro-government people have been under siege since that time. The Syrian army is battling to break the siege, and President Assad has personally pledged to rescue the trapped troops and civilians that are said to include high-ranking officers, family members, and civil servants. The Assad government is livid after the Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu entered Syria yesterday without coordinating the visit with Damascus. Davutoglu arrived in an armored convoy to visit the tomb of a revered Ottoman figure located in Esmesi, a few hundred meters from the border. The tomb of Suleiman Shah, grandfather of the founder of the Ottoman Empire, had originally been located further inside Syria, but was moved closer to the border in February in a Turkish military operation described by the Syrians as an act of flagrant aggression. Syria released a statement saying that the infiltration of Davutoglu inside Syrian territory without the agreement of the Syrian government is a clear aggression on our nation's sovereignty. The relocation of the tomb involved tanks, drones, and reconnaissance planes, as well as several hundred ground troops, and was reportedly carried out due to concerns that the tomb would be destroyed if it fell into the hands of the Islamic State. In Poland, President Bronislaw Komorowski suffered disappointment as he failed to win re-election in the first round of voting. The nationalist opposition candidate, Andrzej Duda, made a surprisingly strong showing and forced a runoff against the president. Duda, who is no fan of the European Union, received 34.5% of the vote, while Komorowski got only 33.1%. The results show rising dissatisfaction with the ruling pro-EU establishment led by the center-right. Anti-establishment punk rock star Paweł Kurkiz finished third. Political analysts say that the runoff on May 24th could go either way. British Prime Minister David Cameron has begun appointing ministers in his new government just a few days after last week's surprise electoral victory by the Conservative Party. Israel Television's Yaakov Elon spoke with one-party activist, Dr. Alan Mendoza, who vied for a seat in Parliament.
Dr. Mendoza, thank you very much for joining us from London.
Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, I cannot congratulate you on a win in your district, but your party did very well, above all expectations. How surprised were you?
Well, I think in fact, my district had a sort of a whiff of this, because we actually achieved the biggest percentage increase in the Conservative share of vote in all of London. And that in itself was not so much a surprise to me, because I've seen the factoring over the course of the campaign, but it kind of reflected what I thought might happen nationally, but it was a hope. I mean, I think all the odds had been suggesting we'd be in hung parliament territory, and we were very much in hope territory that it was going to be the actual victory. It turned out it has been.
Do you have any explanation as to the huge difference between the polls and the results?
Yes, I think it shows the weakness of the polling system in a party system now that has 4 or 5 national parties competing within it. When you've got that kind of complexity and people being very uncertain about how they're going to vote until perhaps the last few days, it's not surprising the polls are out in this way. And this is not uncommon. You've seen it in the Israeli elections. You've seen it actually in the past in other elections in other countries. But it may be that the polling system is completely broken as we know it here in the UK.
When you see this barrage of party leaders' resignations, what's your reaction?
Well, I think what we have here is a resounding victory for the Conservatives, and I think it comes back to, in a sense, a previous question. Yes, there are lots of parties, but when it came down to it, when people had to make their decision in the polling booth, with the exception of Scotland, which is a separate case, people across the UK voted for stability, they voted for economic progress, they voted for a party that wanted to give them economic aspiration going forwards. Now, when you look at the record and the result, it's not a surprise the other party leaders immediately decided they had to resign. The Labour Party has sunk to a new low in terms of what it's done. They've been locked out of Scotland by their own ineptitude. They failed to take the seats in England they wanted to. Their message, which was very left-wing, has been resoundingly rejected. The Liberal Democrats have been crushed. From having been a party of government, they're now down to 8 seats. It's an extraordinary turnaround. It is unsurprising that Nick Clegg had to resign as a result of that as well. And UKIP also failed to break through in the way that they had hoped they would. Yes, they did get votes in various places across the country, but they didn't get seats, and as a result, Nigel Farage honoured his own pledge to resign. But it all comes down to the fact this has been a tremendous night for the Conservatives and for the Conservative vision for the country.
You have spoken about Middle East policies. Are we going to see more of the same with the new government?
Well, I think when it comes to Middle East policies, the Conservative Party at least, has been uniformly excellent on this. There's been a commitment to obviously stopping Iran from developing its nuclear program. On Israel and the Palestinians, there has been a fairness that's been lacking from other parties in this way. I think there is a willingness and indeed an ability now to tackle ISIS in all its forms. I think, in short, what we have seen, the logjam in foreign policy we've seen in the last few years, I hope will now be unblocked, and I'd be very interested to see who gets put in as Defence Secretary and indeed Foreign Secretary as well.
Well, Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Conservative Party, thank you very much.
Thank you.
International Soccer Federation President Sepp Blatter will arrive in Israel in the next few days to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in an attempt to reach a solution over the Palestine delegation's demand that the FIFA Congress hold a vote later this month to suspend Israel from international football play. This comes following yesterday's meeting at FIFA headquarters in Zurich involving Blatter, Israel Football Association chief Ofer Eini, and his Palestinian counterpart Jibril Rajoub. During that meeting, the sides agreed to engage in dialogue on the issue, but reached no concrete conclusions. Jibril accuses Israel of hampering the activities of Palestinian soccer and restricting the movements of its players. Israel says it imposes certain restrictions due to security concerns. If FIFA were to suspend Israel, it would bar all its national teams and clubs from competing in international competitions. In local money matters, the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading, while shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and temperatures are expected to drop slightly tomorrow with chances of light rain in the north. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Aaron Viner will be at this desk tomorrow with more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.